My name is Lisa Kavanaugh, and I had the privilege of representing Ray Champagne in successfully challenging his conviction. I don't remember exactly when Ray first started calling me his attorney type person, or ATP for short, but I do know that it filled me with a kind of pride that's hard to explain. Ray gave nicknames to very few people in his life: Molly, Michelle, his friend Joe Lab, and receiving a nickname meant that you had earned a place among his most treasured family and friends. Representing Ray was unlike any other experience I've ever had. He was a true thought partner in the work of fighting his own wrongful conviction, having spent decades steeped in all of the ways that the Department of Corrections, or Department of Corruption, as he called it, denied basic human rights and dignity to those it warehoused behind the wall. He first went to prison in January 1975, just months after the highly publicized takeover of Walpole by prisoners who were inspired by the 1977 Attica uprising to fight for their own basic rights. While in prison, he became an avid reader and advocate for the prison book program, transforming himself into an accomplished litigator from behind the wall. I recently reread the last Core Links email that Ray sent me before his release from prison in December of 2019. For context, this email came just days after we'd learned that the judge who was presiding over our motion had decided not to let him out in time for the holidays, even though the writing was on the wall that we were going to win his case, and even though we did win it just 2 months later. This is what he wrote to me. ATP and best human. It appears we are on our way. I took the court's action as extremely positive, and he is well aware of our legal grounds. If that is the situation, I believe that both the law and the facts are with us. I'm feeling good, my friend. But in the spirit of bad things do and have happened, I will state again for all to see. You, my ATP, are awesome and have done an amazing job. And I can't thank you enough for the work and support to not only me, but Molly and everyone who was in this struggle. I must also say that I truly appreciate your friendship. That was Ray, in a nutshell. Not only finding hope in the face of yet another setback, but taking the time to reassure me, the person who was supposed to be helping him, and to honor the importance of our friendship. Some of you may know that in the final months that Ray was at Sousa Baranowski, he got to participate in the first ever Inside Out course that was offered by Tufts University at Sousa. And I want to end by just sharing some of what he wrote to his fellow students at the conclusion of that course, talking about what it meant to him. I've experienced something that was shockingly unexpected, a liberation from my self-imposed confinement through my participation in the Tufts experiment. I say experiment because I didn't know if I could do the course. I didn't know if I could shed my personal armor, shut down most of my internal defense mechanisms in order to fully commit to the course, to my students, fellow students, and the professor. Truth be told, I knew I needed to make changes to appreciate and understand what that would mean for me personally. Prior to taking this course, I would never speak out in any setting that involved the public, speaking where there were more than 4 people, and those 4 people had to be friends or reasonably close associates, definitely not a group of random people in a class. I have a visceral reaction when I'm in a group, and if required to speak, it's emotionally and physically painful. The requirements of this course were also such that I had to open deep wounds and reveal some extremely personal and painful events, things once revealed that could arm others with the weapon of knowledge, as you never know who could become an enemy or who they might share your information, your thoughts, your emotions with. I wanted and needed this course, knowing what it would cost me. In the end, the choice was easy. My fellow students, especially those amazing young people who sacrificed their personal dignity every week, and likely a few other things we don't know about, just so they could participate in this course worth a few credit hours, that they never once made me feel I was anything but a fellow student. How could I not give to them my all? Because in the end, I want those young people to feel this course was worth the time, the effort, the indignities they endured for their imprisoned classmates. For me, my personal transformation is a work in progress because I now know and believe I have the ability to share publicly things like suicide and renewal, things that I have things of value that should be shared and that it's all right to share them, that I can function in a classroom with non-prisoner students and be accepted on equal terms. And finally, my hopes and aspirations are clearer, and they are, to me, stronger because of this course, because of my classmates and the professor. Now let's do it again, he ended. I just want to end by saying how much I loved Ray and how much I appreciated that he overcame all of that, because he really did become one of the most generous and remarkable public speakers I've ever had the privilege of getting to work with. He was out for just over 2 years, but he spoke to audiences of all different ages and walks of life. And he was in every possible way a friend and a partner in everything that I do. I miss you, Ray.
I'm Lauren Pettit, and I'm a staff attorney at Prisoners Legal Services, where I've been since January of 1999. Over the years, I've been lucky to work closely with and get to know Ray Champagne very well. Ray has been foundational to my training and development as a prisoners' rights lawyer, as he has been for many of the people who've worked here over the years. I have always sent students interning with us to meet with Ray because I knew that he could be counted on to give a solid and compelling history of prisons and prisoners' rights work in this state. Ray was always generous with his time and his knowledge. Just this year, early in 2022, Ray spent hours with me going over the history of brutality at Sousa Baranowski to help ensure that our complaint in the Diggs case would be complete and accurate, and place the January 2020 brutality there into the proper context for the court. Ray was a one-of-a-kind person, funny, smart, always honest and direct, but also always compassionate and selfless. He'll be greatly missed.
My name is Elizabeth Matos, and I'm the Executive Director of Prisoners Legal Services. Ray was one of the first board members I met as a new staff attorney at Prisoners Legal Services. Leslie Walker, the prior director, would encourage us to visit board members when we visited different prisons throughout the Department of Correction. I was going to Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, which is the maximum security facility where Ray unfortunately spent most of his time while he was incarcerated. But I always enjoyed our time together. But I also quickly learned that you really had to set time aside when meeting with Ray because he was a talker and a great storyteller. His stories were pearls of wisdom, and his advice was always thoughtful and incredibly helpful. He taught me so much about the prison system, but most of all, what I really loved was speaking with him about how to make PLS a stronger partner and an agent of change, and how I could personally do that in my work. I was there when Ray walked out the courtroom doors into freedom. And it was such a joyous moment, not only because he had been exonerated, but because of the look on his face, which I will never forget. It was an incredible honor to have Ray on the board as a free person. He was brilliant and as passionate as ever. We collaborated on a number of projects, including a piece that came out in the Boston Globe regarding the DOC's statement that it was going to be ending solitary confinement in Massachusetts. We centered his voice at our annual event and during COVID. He'll be deeply missed. He had so much more to give and to teach us, but his spirit lives on, and we will continue fighting to end solitary confinement in Massachusetts. Thank you, Ray.
Good evening. My name is Molly Baldwin. I'm Ray Champagne's life partner. We knew each other for 37 years. Ray's story is one of resilience, hope, and justice. Let's start with justice. At some point, he went to prison as a young person for something he did, and then was found guilty of a prison murder he did not do. At some point also during that time in prison, he figured out that he wanted to be helpful and to promote justice. He learned the law, he helped other people, he addressed conditions of confinement, he wrote letters for people, and generally became of counsel to other prisoners. Over all the years, he believed that he would get out of prison. He was so hopeful all the time and helped other people be hopeful as well. He was also resilient. He had a hard life as a young person. He had a hard life in Walpole and the Supermax and carried on living as much as he could in spite of all those conditions. When he was in prison, he learned a lot about what prison did to people, how prisoners were treated behind the wall, and what the system, the state system, did to prisoners. His story not only was one of wrongful conviction, but it was one of what state entities, multiple state entities, did to people behind the wall and how they could get away with things. He was finally released in February 2020 after 46 years of incarceration, 41 of which were for the wrongful conviction of murder. His story, although an old one, is relevant today, particularly in light of Cell 15 and what took place in the Supermax. He would ask you at PLS and other lawyers and friends and advocates to continue the fight, to bring the light to what happened in Cell 15 in the Supermax. He would ask you to fight for better conditions of confinement and for independent review of such activities, and to hold the state actors accountable for what they did. Because how we treat people, even in the worst of situations, is critically important. As I shared, he remained hopeful always. We had a wonderful 30-month period together outside of prison. He enjoyed every minute of his 30 months. And although terribly sad, I am more grateful than I can share for the time I spent with Ray, both while he was incarcerated and for the 30 months when he was released. Thank you so much for supporting him and believing in him. Please continue to fight for justice. Thank you.